In the spring of 2014, Derek and Maria Broaddus stood on the manicured lawn of 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey, envisioning a new chapter for their family. The sprawling six-bedroom colonial, with its white clapboard exterior and black shutters, exuded charm and promise, a perfect haven for their three young children in a town known for its safety and tight-knit community. They closed the deal in June, eager to move in after some renovations, but their excitement curdled just 3 days later when Derek retrieved the mail. Among the usual bills was an envelope addressed in a jagged, uneven scrawl to the new owner. Curious, he tore it open, expecting a neighborly welcome. Instead, he found a message that sank into his gut like a stone. 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades. It began. I am the Watcher. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, my father in the 1960s, and now it is my turn. The tone shifted from peculiar to menacing as the writer described watching the house fill with life again, and asked, "Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls?" Derek's hands trembled as he read further. The letter named their children, details no stranger should know, and mused. I see them playing in the yard. The little one likes to swing. Have they found what's hidden yet? It closed with an eerie vow. I will know when you arrive. I'll be watching. Maria's face strained of color when Derek showed her the letter that night. They called the police, who arrived promptly but offered little comfort. No fingerprints, no postmark clues, just a typed note mailed locally. The officer suggested it might be a prank, but the specificity gnawed at them. They contacted the previous owners, John and Andrea Woods, who admitted to receiving a similar letter just before selling but had shrugged it off as harmless. We lived there 23 years and never felt watched, Andrea said. Yet, the Broadduses couldn't dismiss it so easily. Within weeks, a second letter arrived, more invasive. I pass by often. The windows tell me everything. I know your plans for the kitchen. A third followed, hinting at secrets. The basement holds more than you think. Ask the house, it speaks to me. The family halted their move-in plans, staying at Maria's parents' house while renovations continued. They installed security cameras, but the grainy footage showed only shadows and passing cars, nothing concrete. Derek took to patrolling the property at night, flashlight in hand, peering into the darkened windows of neighboring homes. The quiet streets of Westfield, once inviting, now felt like a stage where unseen eyes tracked their every step. They questioned neighbors, an elderly couple with a clear view of the house, a single man who lingered too long walking his dog, even a teenage boy who mowed lawns nearby. No one confessed, and no one seemed suspicious enough to warrant more than a hunch. The police investigation stalled, hampered by a lack of evidence. A private investigator, hired in desperation, staked out the property for days, noting only the mundane, birds chirping, leaves rustling, the occasional jogger. Yet the letters persisted, arriving irregularly but always with fresh details, mentions of the new porch railing, the kids' favorite toys left in the yard during contractor visits. One chilling missive read, 657 Boulevard doesn't want you. It's waking up now, and it's not pleased. The Broadduses began to see the house not as a home, but as a living entity, complicit in their torment. By December 2014, they abandoned their dream entirely, leaving the house vacant, its windows dark and accusing, as the Watcher's presence loomed larger than ever. With 657 Boulevard empty, the Broadduses faced a new nightmare, escaping its grip. In 2015, they listed the house for sale, but the story had leaked to the media, splashed across headlines like, "The Watcher haunts New Jersey dream home." Open houses drew gawkers, not buyers, and offers plummeted far below the $1.3 million they'd paid. Realtors whispered about the stigma, and the family's savings dwindled as they paid 2 mortgages. They sued the Woods for non-disclosure, alleging the prior owners knew more than they'd let on, but the case bogged down in legal limbo, offering no resolution. Desperate, they rented the house in 2016 to a young couple willing to overlook the lure. The tenants lasted 6 months, reporting flickering lights, doors creaking open on their own, and a persistent sensation of being watched from the upper floors. One night, they found an old trunk in the attic, locked tight. A locksmith opened it to reveal faded photographs of a family posing in front of 657 Boulevard, dated 1928, their faces scratched out with a blade. The tenants left soon after, refusing to elaborate beyond. "That house isn't right." The Broadduses wondered if the Watcher had left a calling card, but the police dismissed the photos as unrelated, likely abandoned by a previous owner. Theories festered in Westfield's cafes and online forums. Some pointed to Michael Langford, a reclusive neighbor whose family had lived next door since the 1960s. His odd behavior, staring from his porch for hours, fit the profile, but DNA from the envelopes, licked shut, a rare habit in the digital age, didn't match him or anyone in the system. Others speculated a jilted real estate rival or a prankster kid with too much time. A forensic linguist analyzed the letters, noting their formal, almost Victorian phrasing. "The house bids me watch," suggesting an older writer or someone aping an antique style. Still, no suspect emerged. In 2017, a new letter arrived, postmarked from Philadelphia. 657 Boulevard mourns your absence. I see it in my sleep, its room's cold and lonely. The shift to melancholy unnerved Maria, who began to imagine the Watcher as a spectral figure tied to the house's past. The family hired a historian, who unearthed records of a 1920s resident, a widower who died alone in the home, but no living relative surfaced to connect the dots. The trail went cold again, and the Broadduses' hope of answers faded. By 2019, they sold the house at a staggering loss to a couple unfazed by its history. The new owners reported no letters, but they kept blinds drawn and avoided the basement, where contractors once found a hidden crawlspace, empty, yet inexplicably cold. Westfield locals whispered of sightings, a silhouette near the property at dusk, gone when approached. The Broadduses moved far away, but the Watcher's shadow clung to them. In a rare 2021 interview, Derek admitted, "I still check the mail with dread, expecting that handwriting. The case remains unsolved, a riddle wrapped in a town's unease, proof that some Watchers never stop, even when their quarry escapes." Christmas Eve 1945 was a crisp, starry night in Fayetteville, West Virginia, where George and Jenny Sodder's two-story home buzzed with holiday anticipation. The couple, Italian immigrants who'd built a modest trucking business, shared the house with their 10 children, aged 2 to 23. The younger ones, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, begged to stay up late, decorating the tree and swapping tales by the fireplace. Around midnight, Jenny shooed them to bed, leaving the older kids, Marion and John, to lock up. She drifted to sleep beside George, the house settling into silence. At 1 a.m., a sharp bang on the roof jolted her awake, followed by the acrid scent of smoke curling under the door. "Fire!" she screamed, rousing George. Flames licked the downstairs walls, racing up the staircase. They grabbed Sylvia, the toddler sleeping nearby, and yelled for the others. Marion, John, George Jr., and Betty stumbled out, coughing through the haze, but the 5 upstairs, Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, and Betty, 5, didn't answer. George bolted outside, barefoot on frozen ground, to climb to their window, but the ladder, always propped against the house, was gone. He tried the phone, dead. He ran to his coal trucks, reliable workhorses, but neither engine turned over, their keys useless. Neighbors, roused by the chaos, dashed to a payphone, but the volunteer fire department, understaffed and miles away, didn't arrive until 8 a.m. By then, the house was a smoldering ruin. The fire chief declared the 5 missing children dead, blaming faulty wiring. No bones were found, explained away as incinerated in the blaze's ferocity. But the Sodders recoiled at the verdict. Jenny knew her kids, they'd have screamed, fought, or fled. She sifted the ashes herself, finding a stove and pots intact. How could a fire melt bones yet spare metal? George recalled oddities. A man selling insurance weeks earlier, furious when George, a vocal critic of Mussolini, refused him, snarling, "Your house will burn, and your kids will suffer. Days before, the older boys spotted a car idling nearby, its driver staring. And that night Marion heard the roof thud, not sparks, but something heavy. A repairman later confirmed the phone line was sliced, not burned. A witness saw a stranger near the house with a block and tackle, perfect for moving a ladder. The Sodders' grief hardened into suspicion. This wasn't an accident. They questioned the fire's speed, the missing ladder, the stalled trucks. A local crematorium owner told Jenny that even at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, bones linger, yet none were found. By spring 1946, they were convinced their children hadn't died but were taken, the fire a cruel diversion orchestrated by someone with a grudge. George and Jenny Sodder turned their loss into a crusade. In 1946, they hired C.C. Tinsley, a tenacious private eye, who peeled back layers of doubt. The fire chief admitted no electrician had verified the wiring theory. It was a guess, rushed to close the case. A bus driver swore he saw fireballs, law-bound to the roof that night, deliberate and precise. A woman 50 miles away at a Charleston hotel claimed she'd seen 5 children matching the Sodders' descriptions on Christmas morning, accompanied by 2 Italian adults who spoke in hushed tones. The kids looked scared, she said, but alive? Tinsley chased the lead, but the trail vanished. No hotel records, no names. The Sodders erected a billboard on Route 16, plastering it with their children's photos and a $5,000 reward, later doubled. Tips flooded in. A St. Louis woman said Louis lived next door, adopted by a secretive couple. A Texas man claimed Martha was a mobster's wife in Houston. Each hope crumbled, wrong faces, dead ends, or scams. In 1949, George hired a pathologist to excavate the site. They unearthed vertebrae, but experts pegged them as in adults, predating the fire, planted, perhaps, to taunt them. The family clung to every scrap. A waitress who saw kids in a car speeding from Fayetteville that night, their eyes wide with fear. A photo mailed in 1952 of a young man resembling Louis, labeled, Louis Sodder, in cryptic script. Theories swirled. George's anti-Mussolini stance had riled West Virginia's Italian community. Had the mafia retaliated, kidnapping the children as punishment? Or was it a local vendetta, tied to his business success? The insurance man's threat loomed large, but he died in 46, leaving no confession. Sylvia, the youngest survivor, recalled a dream, her siblings waving from a car, mouths open in silent cries. Jenny scoured Italy in 1950, chasing rumors of abducted kids smuggled abroad, but found only sympathy, no proof. The billboard stood for decades, a weathered sentinel. George died in 1969, Jenny in 1989, both certain their children lived. Sylvia kept the fight alive until 2021, the last Sodder gone. No remains, no arrests, just whispers and what-ifs. The case endures as a haunting enigma, its truth buried in the ashes or carried off into the night, leaving a family, and a nation, wondering, were the Sodder children lost to fire, or stolen by shadows that never spoke? In the sweltering summer of 1935, Cleveland, Ohio, was a city of contrasts. Gleaming skyscrapers towered over the industrial skyline, while the slums of the Kingsbury-run shantytown festered below, a maze of rusted railcars and makeshift hovels where the Great Depression's forgotten eked out a living. On September 23, 2 teenage boys, James Wagner and Peter Costura, were kicking a tin can through the scrubby ravine when James stumbled over something soft and pale. He looked down and froze. A headless torso, its arms severed at the shoulders, lay sprawled in the dirt, the skin waxy and bloodless. Beside it, a second body, another male, also decapitated, rested in a grotesque tableau, legs neatly crossed as if posed. The boys' screams echoed through the hollow, drawing a crowd of hobos and rail workers who gaped in horror before someone ran for the police. Detective Peter Merillo arrived at the scene, his stomach turning as he surveyed the carnage. The cuts were precise, surgical, made with a blade honed to perfection, not the ragged hacks of a drunken brawl. The heads were missing, and no blood stained the ground, suggesting the killings happened elsewhere, the bodies dumped like refuse. Coroner Samuel Gerber examined the remains, noting a strange detail. The skin bore traces of a chemical preservative, as if the killer had treated them to delay decay. The victims were identified as Edward Andrassy, a 28-year-old petty crook with a taste for the run's seedy bars, and an unknown man, his fingerprints yielding no match. The press dubbed it the Torso Murders, and Cleveland buzzed with fear and fascination. Over the next year, the bodies piled up. In January 1936, a woman found a burlap sack behind a butcher shop, leaking a foul stench. Inside were the dismembered remains of Florence Palillo, a 42-year-old barmaid known for her hard luck and harder drinking. Her head was never found, but her torso bore the same meticulous cuts. By June, a boy fishing near the West 3rd Street Bridge reeled in a human head wrapped in trousers, its body turning up days later in a gully. Each victim, men and women, drifters and locals, shared the killer's signature: decapitation, dismemberment, and an eerie cleanliness to the wounds. The city's underbelly whispered of a phantom, a mad butcher, stalking the shadows. Police combed Kingsbury Run, questioning vagrants and rounding up suspects, ex-cons, slaughterhouse workers, anyone with a knife and a grudge. Eliot Ness, the famed Untouchables leader, now Cleveland's safety director, took charge in 1936, vowing to end the terror. He ordered raids on the shantytown, torching shacks to flush out the killer, but found only desperation, not answers. Theories swirled: a deranged surgeon, a vengeful mobster, a butcher gone rogue. A witness claimed to see a tall, gaunt man in a black coat near the run the night Florence vanished, carrying a satchel that clinked like metal tools. Another swore they heard a scream cut short by the rumble of a freight train. Yet the trail stayed cold, the killer's precision mocking every lead. By 1938, the count reached 12 known victims, though some whispered of more, lost to the river or buried in unmarked graves. The city's mood darkened, parents locked doors, and the run's denizens slept with one eye open. Ness, under pressure, fixated on a suspect, Dr. Francis Sweeney, a disgraced surgeon with a history of alcoholism and mental collapse. Sweeney's medical skill fit the cuts, and he lived near the run, but he taunted Ness during interrogations, laughing off questions with cryptic jabs. "You'll never pin me, I'm too clever." A polygraph failed him, but without hard evidence, heads, weapons, a confession, Ness couldn't hold him. Sweeney checked into a mental ward, and the killings paused, leaving Cleveland to wonder if the butcher had slipped away or simply waited, watching from the fringes. The lull after Dr. Sweeney's institutionalization in 1938 brought Cleveland a fragile relief, but the mad butcher's shadow lingered. Eliot Ness, haunted by his failure to close the case, kept Sweeney under surveillance, convinced the doctor was biding his time. Yet no new torso surfaced, and the city dared to hope the nightmare had ended. That hope shattered on August 16, 1938, when a worker clearing brush near the East 9th Street dump found a woman's torso, wrapped in a quilt, her limbs scattered nearby in cardboard boxes. A day later, a man's body turned up in the same spot, head missing, his chest carved open with surgical precision. The butcher was back, or had never left, and the dump's proximity to downtown, not the run, signaled a bold escalation. Panic gripped Cleveland anew. The latest victims defied identification. Their fingerprints were burned off with acid, their faces lost to the killer's blade. Coroner Gerber noted the same chemical traces, lime or formaldehyde, hinting at a ritualistic preservation. Ness doubled patrols, flooding the streets with cops and National Guardsmen, but the butcher struck again in October, leaving a leg and an arm in the Cuyahoga River, taunting the city's defenses. The press hounded Ness, branding him a failure, while citizens mailed wild tips. A butcher shop with bloody aprons, a hermit in a railcar hoarding knives, a priest seen muttering near the river at dawn. None panned out. Ness clung to Sweeney as his prime suspect. The doctor, released to a veterans' hospital by 1939, had the skill, the instability, and a chilling alibi gap during the latest murders. Detectives trailed him, once catching him near the run with a medical bag, but he claimed it held only books. Ness hauled him in again, subjecting him to days of questioning and a second polygraph, which Sweeney failed spectacularly. his heart racing at mentions of knives and blood. Still, no concrete link emerged, no trophies, no witnesses placing him at a scene. Sweeney's family, wealthy and connected, pressured Ness to back off, and he was committed again in 1940, this time for good. The killing stopped, but the silence felt like a taunt, not a victory. Decades later, the case gnawed at Cleveland's psyche. In 1950, a drifter found a skull near the old run site, its jaw hacked off, too decayed to tie to the butcher, yet too similar to ignore. In 1975, a letter arrived at the Cleveland Plain Dealer, typed in blocky script. "I took them apart, and they'll never tell. Kingsbury was my canvas." No return address, no proof, just a shiver down the spine of a city that couldn't forget. Historians dug into Sweeney's past. A brilliant surgeon until war and whiskey broke him, discharged from the army with a fractured mind. His hospital records, sealed tight, hinted at violent outbursts, but nothing definitive. The official tally stands at 12 to 20 victims, though some estimate higher, counting transients no one missed. No heads were ever recovered, no murder site found, just bodies, posed and pristine, as if the butcher savored his art. Ness died in 1957, broken by the case that defined his decline, taking his suspicions to the grave. Sweeney passed in 1964, mute to the end, his secrets locked in a mind too shattered to confess. Cleveland rebuilt over Kingsbury Run, paving over the scars, but the mad butcher's legacy endures, a specter of precision and cruelty, a question mark carved in flesh. Was it Sweeney, laughing behind his madness, or another shadow, still unnamed, who turned a city into a slaughterhouse and vanished into its dark heart?